Hi everyone and welcome to the Pear Blossom Press and Hero Arts YouTube collab and hop. I am Natasha Polite Creations and I'm excited to be with you today. My card features the floral pattern cover plate die as well as the small flower layering fancy dies, and I'm using the One Light from Pear Blossom Press as well as their press stamp and die cut bundle. I'm also using some cardstocks from Spellbinders. I have the Tuscan as well as the Poppy cardstock. And I am going to begin by die cutting one A2 panel of the Tuscan cardstock with that floral cover plate. I use mint tape to keep it in place. I also have a second A2 panel that I will die cut later, so you will need two of those. Using that small layering flower die set, I use the centers die. It's one die, and I am die cutting Poppy with that, and then I have vellum that I die cut the larger flowers with. I die cut the flower center 4 times so that I have one for each of those larger flowers on that cover plate. I also die cut the one of the larger flowers that has those indentations, the same one that I'm playing with here. I die cut that twice. I try to match the style of flower with the small layering flower dies as well. So you would need a total of 5 of the vellum flowers and then 4 of the flower centers. As I stated before, I did need 2 panels of the A2 Tuscan cardstock, and that's because I'm layering one on top of the other so that it is a monochromatic look, tone on tone look. I grab the Pear Blossom press stamp and die set, and there is a small circle die in there, and that is so if you make a project, the light can shine through that small circle. So I grab that small die and I play around with the placement on where I want it, and I end up wanting it on the center flower there. I want my one light to shine through that hole, and I thought I did a good job at placement, but later on you'll see I had to shift things around a bit. But I use my mint tape to keep it in place, and then I die cut that circle out. Now I am left with this little hole, and I go in and I erase the little pencil marks and make sure that things still line up the way that I would like them to. And this is when I realized that my circle wasn't centered how I would like. Moving right along, I decided that I wanted to add a little variation of color onto this panel. So I grabbed Butter Bar and I ink up the leaves that are a part of this cover plate just to add a little bit more color variation and depth there. Since I did not die cut any of the leaf dies from the small layering flower die set out to layer on. So I'm just doing a little tone on tone blending to add a little more depth to this card panel. Once that is done, I move on to actually placing my one light. I want to make sure that I know exactly where the button is and that I will have no issues with lining things up. I'm also just making sure that the light shines throughout the entire center and not just half of it, which is why I said I realized that my circle was not centered, but that is an easy fix. I use wet glue to adhere the floral pattern cover plate piece to the front, and I just make sure that my center flower is centered. I do have a little bit of excess in the back, so I go in and I snip that off with my scissors. Again, a simple fix, so do not fret if your circle is not in the right place. It just needs to be in the right area because this pattern cover plate does have a little wiggle room due to the border. With that Tuscan panel pretty much done for now, I move on to the white panel that I'm placing behind that Tuscan panel, and this is where my one light will go. So I cut a panel down to 4 by 5 1/4. And again, this is where my one light will be. So I grab my pencil and I just mark the circle on that white panel of where my light should shine so I can have a good idea of where the light should be placed. So again, I just use some double-sided adhesive and I try to put my light in the spot that I marked and make sure that I know where I am pressing to make this happen. With that white panel being a little bit smaller than A2, I am giving myself some room in case I do not place the panel or the light exactly where it should be. I don't have to worry about going back in and cutting off any of the excess around because the panel is smaller than the Tuscan panel, if that makes sense. With the light in place, I go ahead and grab some foam adhesive strips and I put those around the edge of the card as well as around the one light so that it is not such a tight fit right against the light and the light will not go off. I want the person who receives this card to be able to actually click the card. And my foam strips ended up being a little thin, so I did have to double them up. So just use what you have, and you should be able to get a good bit of height or dimension here so that your light will not stay on the entire time. Just test it out if you are unsure. With my adhesive in place, I did test out my light as well as my placement, and I decided that I would stamp the push sentiment on that small flower. It seemed to be a good placement. So I grab cherry core ink and I stamp the push into place. And that is all the stamping on the actual cover plate. I did go ahead and adhere this panel onto my light, and I just checked to make sure that everything worked and that there were no adjustments needed. Once that was complete and I was happy with it, I moved on to my sentiment. And my sentiment, I decided that I wanted to be tone on tone as well. So I did use more Tuscan cardstock and I stamped a sentiment. I couldn't have picked a better friend. And this comes from the Hero Arts Apple Branch Stamp and Die Set. This was a release from September, if I'm not mistaken, from Hero Arts. So I just heat embossed that using some white detail ink and die cut that out. I went into this project thinking I knew what I wanted to do, and then I went back and forth about, do I want the red centers by themselves or do I want the vellum layering um, layer. And then I went ahead and went with my first idea and added the vellum back in. So I used wet glue to adhere those into place. I am offsetting the vellum layers. I'm also trying to kind of match the shape of the flower with the shape of the flower that is on that floral pattern cover plate. So you see me switching up which flowers I put where. I also went back and forth about where I wanted my sentiment to be. I did want it in the bottom corner on the right facing right now. And I decided that I wanted it in the center later. So that is why there is no flower or vellum layer over that bottom flower. I also used some foam squares to pop up the red centers so that there is even more dimension. And for the flower where the light is, I did go in and add the smallest layer of that small layering flower die. So once I had all my pieces pretty much in place, I did adhere them, and then I went in with some foam squares and cut those in half to go behind my sentiment because I wanted that popped up as well. Once everything was in place, I just went in and cut off the overhang from those vellum flowers. And I also went in with some enamel, the white enamel dots from Hero Arts, and I added those all around. I was unsure of placement and I didn't want them to be bunched, so they're kind of sporadic. And I thought I was done at that point, but I decided to go back in with some clear sequins from a Hero Art sequins mix, and I placed those in the centers of the flowers to add a little more dimension, and that is my completed card. So if you have enjoyed this, please be sure to leave a comment down below. There is a giveaway. You can see all the details on that in the description box, as well as all of the items that I used for this card. There is a hop list, so be sure to check out all of the creators between Hero Arts and Pear Blossom Press that are a part of this hop. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.